Welcome back to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. Have no fear, Daddy-O is here. So, we'll start off by saying today is Thursday, December 21. Tomorrow is December 22nd. Will be my wife and I's 11-year anniversary. So happy anniversary, babe. And we've been together 17 years. Coming up on 18 years in April of 24, so we don't see a lot of that lately anymore, do we? People staying together. Um, yeah, it's been a journey, but I guess that's what a union is, love is to accept that person, love that person, good or bad, through thick and thin, and stick it out and grow. And yeah, it's been quite interesting. Needless to say, I miss some of our days of when we lived in Austin and it was just us. And, we both worked nights at some points, but, sometimes we would just pull the mattress into the living room, sit in front of the TV, go to the library and rent DVDs like The Sopranos, The Wire, certain series because we were too poor to afford many movies at Blockbuster and streaming wasn't a big thing yet. Internet wasn't quite as big. As a matter of fact, in that apartment complex, we actually hijacked internet, and when it stopped working, come to find out, I was a walking peanut one day and got interviewed by a news crew. Apparently, at the other end of our building, they had arrested or busted a prostitution ring. So, yeah, I was on the news in Austin for that. But anywho, that's that. And next, just want to offer any apologies to anybody who might have been trying to get in touch with me via social media or anything, especially TikTok. I really haven't been on social media much lately, specifically TikTok. No, the reason, if you listen to last week's episode, kind of my mental health got hijacked in it, and it continued on, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, not being able to, my sleep was off, everything was just off. So, kind of in an effort to readjust, I just took a little break from social media, try to get my sleep schedule back on, which it's getting there. So yeah, and not only that, some of you guys don't know, some of you might know, but as a child I got burned really bad, spent a month in a little box in the burn unit, where my parents couldn't even touch me except through the box. And so I have scarring down the backs of both of my legs from underneath my ass cheeks to all the way down to my heels. And that skin, it stretches on my upper hamstring. On one side, you can tell the skin texture is different, and it looks like a waffle. And as I've grown, it's gotten smaller, less divotty, but as a kid, like it was Belgian waffle style, deep craters. So sometimes when the weather changes, that skin stretches, pulls around my knees and my feet, and it hurts. Along with that, I have get some inflammation of the sciatic nerve. So all that together just, it puts me in a miserable mood and pretty much destroys any bandwidth I have for anything extra. I can remember as a kid, just almost crying myself to sleep, or, my mom would have to give me some Tylenol, put some Bengay or something on my feet, cover them with socks, and rub my feet and knees till I was able to fall asleep. So it was pretty bad. And when you couple all those things together, that mental health, um, it was a rough week. And then on top of it, school let out last week for the holidays. And with that, Christmas on the horizon, I'm definitely been Ubering as much as possible. You got to strike while the iron's hot. Got to go out and make some money, which is what I'm going to do after this. But thankfully, my mother works from home and she's able to stay with our daughter. So I can go out and work while my wife works as well. So today's episode, we are going to focus on doing the right thing and just tell a couple of stories and kind of end with kind of a story that goes into last week's mental health. And then I'm also going to talk about maybe what I learned from being laid off. So to start off, we're going to start off with a story, and this will kind of be the setup. So when I became a manager at the first location, anytime you're a new manager, I was coming from a non-managerial role into a management role, so that was an adjustment. But typically, whenever you're going into a new role, you got to remember that somebody's leaving that role. Maybe by choice, maybe not by choice. But either way, you're always in an interesting position when it comes to the staff that are left there. Some people may have loved that manager. Some people may have hated him. Some people might be happy he's gone. Some people might be happy that they're not gone. But either way, you're in this kind of contention with an invisible person. How you do things, what you allow, there's always this kind of getting to know one another period when you're a leader and you're trying to lead people, manage people. So, it's always an interesting dynamic. And, I think there's always a little tipping point where you can tell you were behind the eight ball at one point, and then you're kind of in a better spot, and people maybe now trust you. You have a little bit of buy-in. And I'm going to tell you what that point kind of was for me, or at least what I think it was. And when it kind of changed the dynamic and doing the right thing kind of became one of the more important caveats within my leadership mantra, or what I expect. And that's because it's hard to argue with doing the right thing. I mean, the right thing is the right thing. Whether it's easy, hard, negatively impacts you in some way, or whatever, you'll be able to sleep at night because you did what was right. So one day I'm headed to work, and I see this dog running down the road, little 2-lane road. It's like a white pit bull. And as I pull into the clinic I managed, pull into a parking spot, I see this white Explorer pull up and pull frantically and take up like 2 or 3 doctors' parking spots. And I'm like, hey, you can't park there. Like, those are the doctor spots. And that was kind of one of their things, was they wanted like the first 4 spots, the prime parking, which is, it's fine. They work for it. They deserve it. You can make them happy. You can get a little win from the doctors. Then your life's going to be much easier. So anyhow, she's like, oh, I'm not parking here permanently. I'm just got to get my dog. And then comes zooming past that white dog. And she had kids and whatnot in the back. And so, not 10 minutes before, I'm sitting there going like, man, I sure hope nobody hits this dog. Well, let's fast forward. Fast forward a couple of weeks, I'm sitting in a meeting and I get a text from one of my lead front desk people, and she says, "There's a dead dog laying by the mailbox." Now, the mailbox to the facility it's not on the highway, it's kind of like on the property on the very edge next to where the pull-in is, that's maybe partially a turning lane and partially not. And she's like, there's a dead dog, yada, yada, yada. What are we going to do? Meanwhile, I'm in some sort of meeting. I can't get away, and I'm trying to solve this through emails and whatnot, or text messaging. And, I'm like, okay, let's call Department of Public Safety, Animal Control, whoever, see if they'll come remove it. Well, they wouldn't, because they said the dog's not in the road. It's kind of in your property, kind of not, but it's not in the road. Okay. So our maintenance person's there, and they can't really do much either. They're like, well, we can pick it up and put it in the dumpster, because it's probably like a 90-pound pit bull mix. And, I could tell from my interaction with my lead that wasn't necessarily a desirable outcome. That's somebody's dog, throwing it in the trash or the dumpster, whatever. So, basically the road crew was like, well, if you kick it or move it into the road, then we'll have to come get it. Of course, that's not saying that somebody hasn't already run by and hit it. And, it just kind of irritated me that there were just no solutions. So I said, just give me till the end of this meeting and I will take care of it. And so essentially what I did was I came home to the 12 acres where I grew up. And at that time I borrowed my grandfather's truck, and I went to the location and had another male nurse help me load it into the back of the truck. I brought the dog home to our 12 acres, had our neighbor use his tractor and dig a hole, and we buried the dog. And, kind of a couple of things in there was that, I can remember what led to this decision was, I have a whole group of people, a whole team of people, doctors, nurses, front desk people, who they're looking to me for the answer because the dog is out there. They don't know what to do. I pointed them in the right direction, but with no solutions. And they're expecting me to do the right thing, make the right decision. And second, I remember interacting with the lady and seeing that she had children and, knowing that that was their dog. And therefore, I didn't feel comfortable putting it in a dumpster, throwing it out in the road so somebody else would come and handle it. So I made the decision that I'll just pick up the dog myself and take it home and bury it. We got plenty of room. And if I ever saw the lady and her kids again, I would be able to tell them, hey, sorry, your dog did get hit, but, not to worry. There's a place on the 12 acres. I can show you where it's at. It had a proper burial. So that's what I did, but I could definitely tell when I did that it shifted in how the team thought about me, what they thought about me, maybe how they looked at me. And they knew I was always willing to do the right thing. And, at the end of the day, that's kind of what matters. And when I would hire people, that would be my expectation. And, when someone new started or anytime somebody had a question, my answer was, hey, as long as you do the right thing, the best thing for the patient and the right thing, you'll have no complaints from me, because nobody can argue with the right thing. So, when in doubt, do the right thing, and it's always going to work out. And on that note, at some point, we would have engagement surveys where your nurses and whatnot, your physicians, just like you evaluate your bosses, they evaluate you. And I had good employee engagement scores. I was a tier 1 leader, meaning that I had some of the highest engagement scores in the organization, meaning that my people thought that I listened to them. I treat them fairly. I include them. So that's probably one of my proudest accomplishments, because, they're the people doing the work. You're just kind of the person as a leader, organizing the information and kind of putting the right people in the right places to be successful in whatever that mission is. But, they do all the work, so it's always all about them. But definitely, probably one of my proudest accomplishments from that period of my life, that job, and what I was doing at that time. But, this kind of goes back all the way to when I was 17. And I joined the Navy. And, as a kid, I grew up with asthma. And I had pretty much outgrown it. It wasn't terrible, but, typically in the military, it's like if you have any history whatsoever, they kind of disqualify you. And, of course, recruiters, they want to meet their numbers. So they're like, oh, just don't say anything, yada, yada, yada. I passed all my physicals, and I was in the military, so I did make it. But the point was that I can remember before I left for boot camp, because I was always kind of instilled with this do the right thing mentality kind of thing from a young age. And I can remember talking to my grandfather, the same one whose truck I borrowed, the same one who passed away several years ago. And I told him, I was like, hey, they asked me, if I had asthma, or the recruiter told me not to say anything. And, when I go to boot camp, they have this thing called the moment of truth, where if you haven't disclosed anything at that time, you can disclose it. And, so when we had the moment of, my grandfather was like, well, just do the right thing. And whatever happens, happens. So we get there, you have the moment of truth. And of course, this is going in my head the whole time. And so I'm like, well, here's to nothing. And they were like, all right, here's the moment of truth. And I guess they have some people, and then I guess you go over to the side and you can talk to them. Maybe you forgot to disclose that you had a felony or an extra misdemeanor or something, although I'm sure you would have discussed that with waivers. But I go over and I told the guy, and I was like, hey, I left out on my application that I had asthma as a kid. And the guy, no shit, goes, he's like, you just want to leave. Go get back in fucking line. And that was it. He thought I was lying. I was telling him the truth. So I got back in line and completed boot camp. Had no problems. But, kind of my point is that I did the right thing, and the guy didn't believe me. And I got to stay and got to do something I always wanted to do. Something I wanted to try, something I thought would be challenging. So, yeah, it works out. And which kind of leads me into the next segment, which is wishing other people would do the right thing. And kind of how this led into last week's mental health and whatnot. Let me take a drink here. But so around Thanksgiving, my wife and my daughter and I went out of town, did some shopping, little staycation, because my mom was sick and her and my daughter didn't get to take the girls' trip over Christmas like they were going to. Over Thanksgiving. And, my daughter takes a stuffed animal with her. And we get home and we realize we don't have it. So this is late, 10 o'clock at night or something. I call there and they're like, call back in the morning because housekeeping's not there. And I call back the next day and I get in touch with somebody, and lo and behold, they found it. And I was like super thankful, super appreciative, because my daughter was kind of having a meltdown over this special animal that she left. And the person's like, so we were in Dallas, and my phone number is from the Austin area. And the person's like, well, I'll bring it to you tomorrow. I'm actually going to Austin to get my diploma because I just graduated from UT. And I'm like, well, I'm actually not in Austin and won't be in Austin. And you won't be coming by here because we're somewhere else, if you could mail it. And they're like, sure, we'll go ahead and mail it. And he took down all my information and said, I'll be getting a tracking number. Never, no tracking number, nothing. My daughter's asking me, when's it coming? So then I start calling back and basically get the runaround until eventually I actually get in touch with a manager. And she's like, oh, I remember you and this whole situation, but no, it's never been found, and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, listen, how do you have it last week and you're willing to hand deliver it to me? And now all of a sudden, you never had it. Really? Like, you're a manager and you don't even know what's been going on this whole time? And she's like, well, I'm going to go to housekeeping, look for it. I'll call you back. A day goes by. She never calls back. I'm like, I'll give it 2. And then, this is all, this is going on like a couple of weeks. And I'm having the bad mental day last week. And kind of as I'm slowly getting over that, I just get a ton of anxiety about having to call this woman back and go through this runaround, basically, this bullshit scenario. And so I actually file a corporate complaint through like a portal thing, because it's damn near impossible to talk to anyone these days. So I filled that out, created a case number. As I'm Xing out of that, I see a little chat bubble and decide to chat with somebody live, give them the whole situation, tell them I have a case created, and, no, I was not very nice to the person. But I did tell them that, hey, my beef is not with you, it's with this location and these people. And we eventually got a call back, and it hasn't fully been resolved. And I don't want to say much more than that, but I will at a later date. But, you know, essentially, we get a call back from somebody from corporate. She left me a message, and I made my wife call her back, because I was super pissed, to say the least. And apparently, you know, this person who found it, offered to drive it to me, quit their job. And nobody can get a hold of them. Not the local management, not the corporate. So, yeah. What do you think of that? I mean, you're an adult and you need to take something from a 10-year-old girl. You took it from my daughter, which is kind of like taking it from me. It's actually a little worse. Yeah. Get a little pissed off just thinking about it. You might even notice the change in the tone of my voice. But, you know, I was probably about 7 times angrier that day. And I wanted to take a potato peeler to this person. But, you know, this anger clouded my judgment. It got in my way. I let it take control. I was on a delivery and I forgot to leave the person their drink. And I was at the next delivery when I realized it. And so all the anger I had immediately turns to guilt and shame. Because it's not me. 2, it's easy, it was right in front of me. And 3, you know, you just let anger get the best of you, which is not good. And now you're off your game. And now you're not giving people the service they deserve, because this person's taking up space in your mind and controlling your emotions. And once I kind of got that instant karma kind of thing going on, I was like, So I had to make a long delivery, but on that long delivery, on the way back, I stopped, got an extra Dr. Pepper for the person, went by, and dropped off the original Dr. Pepper plus another one that I bought. Knocked on the door, nobody answered, had a notepad and pen in my car, so I left them a note saying, hey, I'm so sorry that I made this mistake, but I've stopped and got you an extra fresh Dr. Pepper, you know. And, you know, no, I didn't get a tip, and I didn't deserve one. I got the flat fee. It was my error. I let anger get the best of me. And, you know, I made a mistake. But I also corrected that mistake. You know, with a little interest. Making sure that whatever they had was fresh. Knocking on the door, even though I was so embarrassed that I had done that. And then also leaving them a note saying, hey, I know I messed up. But, you know, hopefully, you know, like anyone, anything, hey, I messed up, own it. Let's start moving forward. How can we repair this? So if you're out there listening, I hope you got your Dr. Pepper. But yeah, and that's not the first time. I always try to make sure that that's where the moral compass is pointed. But, I haven't always done the right thing. I've made my fair share of mistakes. So I definitely don't want to seem like I'm preaching or, I'm not at fault or to blame, which is kind of why I told the story after. Sure, it's a Dr. Pepper, but, to me, it's this person paid for it. I was getting paid to do a job, and I made a mistake. But you correct it, whether it's big or small. There's so many things. As long as you're not making mistakes that you can't come back from. And, that's kind of, it depends on the situation, but like when you work in an ER on a team, mistakes can cost lives. But, in other settings, whether it's billing, correcting an address, a phone number, all that can be fixed. So it's like, don't worry about the small stuff. Worry about the stuff you can't fix. All right. Next, moving on kind of into last week's episode of kind of discussing a point where, I felt like a depression come on because I wasn't able to maybe obtain what I felt like I deserved, or stuck up for myself and was told, oh, still, it's not enough to get you what you want. And, when I got laid off, you understand with the pandemic and everything, yes, it's business, but that was the first time I'd ever been laid off, fired, or anything, so it was kind of devastating. But also, there was a point in time where I was like, look, I got to get over this. I got to move on. And one of the ways I did that was, it's like forgiving a person. Yes, you do it for the other person, but you do it for yourself so you can move on. And part of my thing was forgiving the organization that laid me off. And how did I do that? Was I thought about all the things I learned in that time period. That's what I got from it. That's what they gave me. Even though some of it was hard, trial by fire, there wasn't a lot of help. There wasn't training on some of it. You just learn. And I learned a lot. I learned how to run, a business, 2 separate ones with large budgets, with interesting characters, when you speak of physicians and nurses. Physicians are not the easiest people to manage, to get to do things sometimes. But, I look at everything I learned and I'm like, man, that's what I got. That's what I'm to be thankful for. How can I be thankful of this situation? When you're the person who's responsible for 2 single sites that have a multitude of people's departments and things and regulations, and you're cut off, and it's kind of like being a homeowner where you start learning really fast on the fly, like how to diagnose and assess things. Because guess what? If the water cuts off, You can't stop every doctor's appointment and walk in urgencies and whatnot because there's no water. And if you can imagine, infection prevention is huge in healthcare settings. So hand washing has to be there. But there's all kinds of little small things like that that come up all the time. And whether it's alarm systems and, we had a fitness center with a pool and there's pumps and all kinds of alarms and outside things. And, when time changes, you got to have the lights outside change so people are safe walking to their cars in the dark. I mean, there's just so much stuff. And, I learned all that from working there. And for that, I'm thankful. Because I know that if I had my own business or somebody wants me to run their business, or when it comes to, hey, you got to figure it out. Like stopping, quitting, stopping clinic, whatever, like you can't just shut it down. Like the show's got to go on. And so you got to figure it out. I mean, one time I can remember sitting in my office doing paperwork and somebody texted me a picture that there's a snake by the front door. What do? I go back and I find this thing that looks kind of like a little stick with a lasso on it, and I'm going to go out there and wrangle a snake because there's no one else to do it. You can't let patients walk by a snake in the front door and this, that, the other. There's no pest control nearby because we're in a more rural area. You just got to figure it out. And lo and behold, I go out there and it's a plastic snake that had fallen from the lights under the awning by the entrance because you don't want birds building nests in the lights underneath your awnings. So, I got lucky. It was a plastic snake, or maybe the snake got lucky because I was coming out there. And that's a joke. But, the point is that there's all kinds of things I did, had to do, learned to do, had to figure out in order to kind of be that person, to be that leader, to be the person that your team thought they could look to. I mean, the fact that I took a biology college course doesn't qualify me to go catch snakes. But that's what you do. You figure it out. You do it. And, when you come across a bad situation or something that wasn't perfect, you got to look at it and go, what did I learn? What is something that I can get out of that situation that's going to make me better, help me move on, help me in my next position? I got to learn project management by participating in, standardization of, when hospital corporations buy up other ones and they join together and you want everybody on the same contract. You want everybody using the same supplies because that gets you buying power. So it's kind of one more thing, project management, to add to a set of skills that I have. But, someday these skills, got a phone call, hold 1 moment. But anyway, one day, these skills will be used for my benefit, something I'm doing, or if somebody needs someone who, I think I have the unteachables, if you will. Character. I have a master's degree, and that's just proof that I can learn about anything. I can be taught skills and how to do things and concepts and whatnot, but I have the things you can't teach. Some of those things that seem to be lacking out there in the world. You know, people unwilling to do the right thing, which is my whole irritation with that hotel. I shouldn't have to file a corporate complaint. I shouldn't have to go that far. Maybe I should have done it sooner. But what just happened to people doing what's right? So, when in doubt, do the right thing. Try to go out, be part of the solution versus part of the problem. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.